but we also really took a hard look at what we can do as a company that our customers maybe one by one couldn't have done or couldn't have access to. For instance, recently we, together with ShareAction of course, but we kind of nudged Unilever to actually make better choices in their food products, like healthier choices in their food products. And we think this is really something how we can make it matter for our customers, at least a little bit more than kind of simply, buying the right ticket from the market.
Alvar, it's such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So let's start the conversation. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
I'm Alvar. I'm the CTO of a company called Grünfin, also a sort of a later co-founder. And before joining Grünfin, I spent 7 or 8 years at Wise, previously TransferWise. My, let's say, last biggest role was Director of Engineering for Platform and Infrastructure, but I managed or sort of had the opportunity to work with quite a number of product teams there. So it was a pretty much of a rainbow of a journey.
Very cool. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because we've been talking to Invest Estonia earlier and Enterprise Estonia, and when we keep hearing that investment is staying within Estonia, that many companies have made exits, that they come back and invest in other companies, and I guess you're a perfect example of that. So that's great to hear that. So let's talk a little bit about Grünfin. Tell us what's its core value proposition and what's the problem that it's solving in the market.
So Grünfin really was brought to life, if we really zoom out, right? So Grünfin really was brought to life to drive more capital into sustainable companies and initiatives. So that's really what we're about. And as we have been looking around the market and especially sort of like retail investment space, we're seeing that people actually care about that more and more. People understand that their money can have an impact, and you can actually vote with your money, not just in terms of being a responsible consumer, but also in the sense of being a responsible investor. And we just want to make it as easy and accessible and almost like a no-brainer as possible for people to come in and invest to these sustainable businesses.
Right. And why is it that as of lately, more and more people are deciding to go down this value investing route?
Well, probably the people themselves are the best to answer, but the fact is that is a fact, right? More and more funds are actually being moved into sustainable assets. I think the space has grown 5-fold over the past 5 years. It's still a tiny fraction if we sort of look at like global assets and then global investments. But still, definitely, this is I would even call it like a mega trend, at least in the investment space. And I think if we look around, we actually see a lot of positive change that people would love to give more momentum to, such as gender equality, for instance, and overall diversity, but also some maybe not so great changes, such as climate change. So we all see the heat waves, etc. So people really, I think, are very ready to take their money to causes that then help with these bigger issues that they care about.
And how exactly does Grünfin help investors make those more aligned choices with their values?
We really also gave it a good and hard thought, actually. So yes, there is this bigger mission, but in order to achieve that, or even like to start moving towards that, we actually need to have customers and need to actually have something to offer. And what we felt we can offer is just taking the guesswork and taking this sort of basically taking this sense of difficulty and complexity out of this picture. And what I mean by that is, whenever you go out and Google about, basically, if you go and Google how to start investing, it's quite likely, like the first page, 80% of that would be, this is how you trade on the market, this is how you open a brokerage account. Maybe at best, this is like a robo-advisor you can take a look at, but this still, it feels like a hobby. And I want to do the right thing. Maybe I have some disposable income. I want to sort of invest it in a good way. maybe I've heard about like asset or wealth management, but that's way above my league. Usually, you know, you need to have like 100K or $1 million ticket to get into that room, right?
Yeah.
So I want to do the right thing. I want to be passive about it, and I kind of like want to have peace of mind when I go to bed at night, right? And we felt that that as a team we have the competence, the know-how, and also the ambition, obviously, to turn that into a product that people can simply come do, onboard in 5 minutes, simply start like a monthly payment, and we do the rest. And the rest really is then screening hundreds of thousands, I think 300,000 different funds that are available in the world, screening them for obviously good returns, low management fees, but most importantly actually for their, like, let's say, impact ambitions. And then ratings from the different rating agencies. I think there's probably 14 parameters that go right now into our fund selection.
Right. So if I understand this correctly, what you do is you basically take information from the funds, and then you make it accessible and present it in an easy to consume way, so that investors can make the right decisions.
True, but we actually do a bit more than that. So as a product, we're really about like. Let's say, reducing the friction of having to make many choices from our customers. And when you come and onboard to Grünfin, you simply basically pick between 3 focus areas. There's climate change, gender equality, and healthcare. And then we actually sort of, you know, put the meat on that skeleton, basically. So we have picked the funds out of that huge selection that really then sort of like fill in the gaps in the portfolio structure that we sort of offer to you or suggest to you. And then as a customer, you simply basically say, hey, this is what I like, or maybe you want to go in and change that area a little bit, or change the risk level or something. And still you end up with like a kind of like a structured portfolio. You just make your monthly payment and we do the rest. Okay,
let's address the issue of, let's call it impact washing, right? Derived from greenwashing, but we know that it's been in the media that many companies have decided to take advantage of this wave and start claiming credentials that are perhaps not very viable about how impactful their activities are. So how does Groomform measure the level of impact that a particular fund or a particular company has so that it can communicate that in a reliable way?
I think we're actually quite lucky as a company, because we're getting started at a time where the European Union is really stepping up the game in terms of building the taxonomies and kind of like putting up reporting regulation as well on both on like publicly traded companies, but also asset managers to then, you know, in that structured way actually report on their impact. And that's definitely something that that's helping us as well, because that means that neither us or anyone else has to build like a 1,000-person strong research and analytics team, right? So we think that actually that regulation by itself, so SFDR, Article 6, Article 8, Article 9, I'm not going to go into detail, but somebody can look it up if they're interested. It really kind of helps to at least like frame the discussion about the actual impact. Like, you know, creating another set of labels by itself isn't going to guarantee that the information is correct, you know, or the reports are correct. Obviously, that sort of regulation, that sort of oversight needs to follow as well. But at least, you know, we have like a shared taxonomy and like a set of metrics or a set of attributes or parameters or indicators that we can all look at and then already assess whether this or that number is actually sort of correct. So I think that is super important, and I really think like the European Union is doing a great thing here. In that sense, as a company, we simply need to follow the regulation and then do what's right towards our customers.
Okay, I think some critics might have said that this is all good and well, but perhaps it's coming in a little bit too late, because some of the damage has already been done by greenwashing. A lot of confusion has been brought into the market, and investors, you know, really with the best of intentions have been totally confused about where to put their money, about what the ratings means, about what ESG scores means. So the question I have for you is, what are the challenges that remain in ensuring that impact doesn't just become another PR veneer in which companies showcase their credentials?
I think, like when you say PR veneer, I think that's really interesting because first of all, I very much agree that the problem is there, and there has been a lot of greenwashing. Unfortunately, some big players like Deutsche Bank recently really got caught in a pretty bad storm. However, if we see companies doing this, if we see companies, putting up a good face, this also means, something has changed in the environment for them, so that they have to care. And I think that itself is actually sort of like worth noting, because it really means that both from their customer side, but also from their investor side, there actually is pressure to look good in that sense. And I think this is like a really good backdrop that you may tell your wife that you've been going to the gym and actually you've been going out for beers, but at least in your heart you want to be the good guy. Right. So I think like that's sort of is a really useful foundation. And then if we look at what we can do really kind of to make it matter for us as a company, it's definitely important to also not just stop at buying the right or good-looking ETFs for our customers, but we also really took a hard look at what we can do as a company that our customers maybe one by one couldn't have done or couldn't have access to. It's like governments and tax money. You're supposed to put tax money in a place where you solve people's problems kind of as a group. Yep. So what we did was we found a really interesting non-profit in UK called Share Action. That's actually an investor coalition, and we partnered with them and really are putting a lot of effort into working with them as they go from a boardroom to boardroom or a shareholder meeting to another and promote these resolutions or promote like new proposals that the companies sort of should do differently. For instance, recently we together with Share Action of course, but we kind of nudged Unilever to actually make better choices in their food products, like healthier choices in their food products. Mm-hmm. And we think this is really something how we can make it matter for our customers at least a little bit more than kind of simply buying the right ticket from the market. Right.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit now about your business model. So my understanding is that as you mentioned earlier, the asset management model has traditionally been prohibitively expensive to people unless they have a high net worth, right? And this is because the advisory model requires quite a lot of high touch processes and dedicated advisors, etc. Now, through technology, Grünfin is able to bring similar services to market at the exorbitant amount of €3.90 per month.
Very true.
Please tell me how we're talking about a massive difference. How is that achieved?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, you can never forget about corporate greed factoring into things. But anyway, let's put that aside. So if you look at the product that Grünfin's offering to our customers, the value we offer is we're really taking a lot of guesswork out of investing from the customer themselves, but also what we offer is, let's say, tweaked based on your personal desires, but not like completely personalized. I think that's like one thing to make note of, and also. So basically, by keeping the product simple, we're able to take advantage of economies of scale. Basically, increasingly as our customer base grows and as our volumes grow, our transaction costs like necessarily don't so much, right? Yeah. Obviously, our product offering might become a little bit more nuanced in the future, but still, the core fact is that we don't need to really take orders from a customer or another and then go and specifically fulfill that on the market for them alone. What we're doing is we're basically taking the inflows from our customers and simply making the trades. So the product actually is pretty simple, and we're really able to kind of like scale down on the transaction costs. I think this is what it comes down to. And we shouldn't charge more for that because it really doesn't cost more done like this. Right.
Okay, tell me a little bit about your customers. Who is the typical customer of Grünfin?
We're quite proud of that in some ways because we're able to say that in our main sort of demographic age group, we're almost 50-50 gender equal. For an investment product, that's actually a pretty big deal, as most of the investors, most investors in the market tend to be men, right? And that's super important for us as well. Like we're really also, like, among other waves, we're hoping to ride the wave of like female empowerment and kind of taking responsibility of their own financial future. It sounded a bit off, but you sort of get the drift. So that's one thing that we're really proud of. But also we learn a lot from what our customers say about our product. And what they say about our product is that they really value it being like a sustainable investing platform. So sustainability as such really matters to them. But also, people today are sophisticated enough to at least, attempt to look behind the greenwashing. So we have pretty good confidence that our customers, at least at large, believe in us doing a little bit better than the general sort of just putting stickers on things, right? And then the other bit is our customers also appreciate the ease of use, accessibility, and the cost as well. But it's mostly sort of like ease of use and accessibility. So we seem to have quite a lot of customers for whom this is like a bit of an enlightening investment experience. That I'm doing the right thing. I'm feeling good about myself. I'm also following good investment practices. Small amounts over a long period of time. Really hard to argue with that. But I'm doing the right thing at the same time, and it's super easy.
Right, and that brings me quite nicely to my next question, because in this impact investment environment, you constantly hear the debate about profit over purpose. In your experience, what you've seen from the results that your investors in your platform experience, is there really a trade-off between investing for impact versus the profitability?
I'm bragging a little bit, but there seems to rather be a trade-off between like not investing for impact. So we just looked at the performance of our portfolios, our customers' portfolios over the first half of this year, and then we looked at the same for Nasdaq and SP500, for instance, like some pretty big, well-known indexes as well. And while the market was harsh on everybody, especially in Q2, so we were all in the red. but our portfolios actually were a lot less in the red than the other ones. But I really would also like not just want to talk about reducing risks, because also when we speak about gains, a good example would be I think may have already mentioned that over the past 5 years, like the fund allocation into the sustainable funds, basically sustainable assets, has grown 5-fold. This definitely is a continuing trend because there's quite a long way to go. But I think also more interestingly, maybe like we already discussed, like Q2 being a pretty harsh investing environment this year alone, and over this Q2, the SDG oriented funds had like a 33 billion inflow into them, where the rest of the market had like a 280 billion outflow. So money was moving out of the public markets, but actually huge difference between, well, maybe the numbers are like not comparable because there's like a huge difference in the share of these assets available, but on the other hand, clear trends in there. So and when we think, because there's quite a long way to go, I think our customers and anyone investing sustainably can kind of benefit from that motion.
Right.
At one point, maybe 100% of the stock market will be sort of sustainable and sustainably managed, but then we sort of have achieved our joint mission. So that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting trend to point out. Now, as a CTO, what are the main technology challenges that you still find in being able to bring a product like this to market?
That's that's a really interesting question, because as a CTO, well, as an engineer, I've built quite a few different systems at different scales, and handling people's money obviously is always a serious business, and I'm really happy that it's regulated pretty well overall. So that's one. Building things for scale also comes with its own set of problems and complexities. And then like internal financial mathematics and accounting and auditing and reporting, and that's all, it can all be a very complex matter. but I don't really think that's the main challenge, because much of that actually has already kind of been commoditized. There's tools and platforms and libraries or some like third-party vendors for that, or then simply there's a lot of things that other people have done before. I think the most interesting challenge a company like ours, or like any growing company faces, is staying agile enough to really kind of like continuously adapt based on the learnings you get from the market. And when you, this is something I learned at Wise, but like when you then start growing as a company, you really like need to evolve both your tech but also your team or like your organization to then be agile, be flexible, and remain that way. And I think that's like the really interesting challenge. So the tech maybe even isn't so important.
Oh, right. Well, it's, at the end, it always comes back to the people, right?
Well, yeah, I guess that's always the sort of truism in the end. Yeah.
Okay. Then tell us. I don't want to make any assumptions. Your enthusiasm is evident. It comes across when you're speaking. But I'm still going to ask you, why did you choose to join Grünfin?
Yeah. Really personally, fintech as such really hasn't been like a pure or like the direct clear draw for me as such. It just somehow has happened. I've worked at Swedbank, one of the largest banks here, then TransferWise, and then now Grünfin. So I guess that's just something I sort of know how to do. But with Grünfin, what really spoke to me was it really addressed my personal interest in kind of like doing something for the better of the world. Like I kind of figured, might it be clean tech, clean energy, maybe even like agri-tech, kind of felt that I'd maybe, steer in that direction. But then Triin and Karin, our founders, came my way, and I was really quite excited to find this nice match between actually like a pretty big mission of changing the world by driving capital to the sustainable companies, but also building something ground up as one does. But it always feels so much better with a good mission.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, and then just to close, tell us what's Grünfin's vision, and where do you hope that what role will you play in the ecosystem within the next 5 years?
Probably that's the hardest question, because it's also something that we expect our customers to tell us. But even if you just think about the different aspects of investing or wealth management, and then kind of look at the whole range of products or services that could benefit from a low cost, impact-oriented sustainability lens. We actually have like a pretty wide picture, like a wide variety of things that as a company we might look to incorporate into our product portfolio. There's whether that's like employer pension plans or whether that's micro investments, that's gaining some popularity as well. There's really a lot that we can do, and we think we have a pretty solid groundwork, like pretty good rails to then take to these different customer segments or different use cases and simply scale up. So we're quite looking forward for that. But I think we have plenty to do without moving anywhere from our core mission of just putting more money where it works on the right things.
Matters. Indeed. Well, Alvar, it's always really inspiring hearing people that are so enthusiastic about what they're doing. So just thank you so much for coming and sharing that with us.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's really been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you.